Connor Bedard stays red hot and records his first 5-point game in the NHL to help the Blackhawks beat the Anaheim Ducks 7-2. All that and plenty more right here on Locked On Blackhawks.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome on into another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Can go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman2. And also make sure to follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey as well. So that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And hey, my Locked On Blackhawks account on X is also closing in on 1,600 followers. So make sure to go and give them a follow as well. I would greatly appreciate it. And also a quick reminder, if you haven't done so already, to please go and subscribe to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, or subscribe for Celebrini, as I'm calling it around here. Also go and hit that like button, comment down below as well. And I also got to let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make sure to sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. All right, good morning, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. We got a little bit of everything out of this game between the Anaheim Ducks and the Chicago Blackhawks last night. Nearly had a goalie fight between Peter Mrazek and John Gibson. We had some tempers flaring on both sides there in the third period. A 7-goal performance for the second consecutive game out of the Chicago Blackhawks. That's the first time they've accomplished that since 1991. They also added 4 power play goals. The wave was going on in the crowd at the UC. A lot of fun was being had last night, and it was a much welcome change of pace because if you've been watching the Blackhawks all season long, you know not a lot of fun has been being had. So for them to go and win consecutive games for just the second time this season, the first time they've done so since December 7th and December 9th, over 3 months ago, it has to feel good for the guys in the locker room. They absolutely deserve it. The fans in attendance last night at the UC absolutely deserve it as well. Glad to see they were able to have a lot of fun and enjoy the atmosphere and the Blackhawks beating down on the Ducks. And to all of us who have been tuning in to the Blackhawks night in and night out, we absolutely deserve this one as well. An offensive explosion to get the job done for the second consecutive game. The Blackhawks absolutely went crazy offensively in the final 40 minutes. It was a little bit of a shaky start, but they find their groove there in the middle frame and really pick up their play. And man, I wish the Blackhawks could play the Ducks and the Coyotes more often because we saw what's gone down against Arizona over the last week, and now the Blackhawks have bested the Ducks in 10 of the last 12 meetings since the start of 2019. So, yeah, I wish those two teams would pop up on the schedule a little bit more. Fortunately, the Blackhawks do have another meeting here with the Anaheim Ducks in just 8 days' time, I want to say. But there were a lot of takeaways that I have from this game, from this 7-goal performance from the Blackhawks offense last night. I'll be getting into most of them during segment 2 of today's episode, so make sure to stay point until that time in today's episode. But for topic number 1, the thing we got to kick off the show with here today has to be none other than Mr. Connor Bedard. And I mentioned on the show yesterday when previewing this matchup with the Anaheim Ducks, one of my biggest things I was going to be looking at, and honestly, Blackhawks fans, this is something I've actually been meaning to say over the last couple of days. What I'm really going to be focusing on over these last 16 games of the regular season here are Connor Bedard, Kevin Korchinski, and Alex Vlasic, since those are really the 3 pieces that are here right now that could be parts of the puzzle in the future moving forward for the Blackhawks rebuild. I'm talking long-term, not just a 2 to 3 year filler. Those guys seem like long-term pieces. They're really going to get most of my attention and how they're developing, in particular compared to what they looked like at the start of the season. That's really what I'm going to be looking at over these last 16 games for the Blackhawks. But I mentioned, Connor Bedard, would he be able to keep up with that same aggressive mentality that he had over the weekend in this one against the Ducks. And I mentioned I had a feeling he wasn't going to be satisfied with what he did over the weekend and he'd be on the hunt for another master performance. But boy, were we in a treat for what Connor Bedard had to offer last night. He records his first career 5-point game in the NHL, took over the game in the second and third period. The Ducks had absolutely no answers for him. He was clearly the best player on the ice. And oh yeah, folks, still only 18 years old. Might as well go and give him the Calder right now because there is no rookie that's even close to the impact that he makes on a nightly basis. And there are some crazy numbers I'm about to go and get into here in a second on Bedard. He just keeps making history and keeps joining the record books. And boy, is it a lot of fun to watch. But I told you all, when he came back from injury, minus 250 on him to win the Calder Trophy was value because I didn't see any world in which he wasn't going to win it. And with what he's done over the last 2 games now, 5 points against the Ducks last night, 3 points in the win over the Coyotes on Sunday, I think he's basically hit the nail into the coffin on the Calder Trophy sweepstakes. Sorry to all the Brock Faber truthers out there. I haven't looked at what the line is for Bedard. I got to imagine it's at least minus 500 now. So yeah, I think I was right. Technically minus 250, even though it was laying some juice. I absolutely thought that was value on Connor Bedard. But like I said, after another masterclass performance last night from the 18-year-old rookie, just some elite stats that he's been putting up here recently that I've been seeing all over social media, just him breaking some record or joining some record books. It's crazy what this kid is able to do. He now has 10 points over his last 4 games, 18 points in 13 games with the bubble. Maybe, if there's ever a time in the future when he's struggling or going through a little bit of a schneid, we just have to throw the bubble back on Bedsy. He gets to a different level when that bad boy's on. The Hawks have also scored 34 goals since his return, since he's been wearing the bubble. Connor Bedard has a point on 53% of those goals, and he's either scored or been the primary assister on 47% of them. Just think about that. He's responsible, and not just with the secondary assist. He's the goal scorer or the guy that's setting it up on 47% of the Blackhawks goals since he's been back in the lineup. It's incredible how much he means to this team, and it was rather tough to watch them without him. He also, after recording 5 points last night, became one of just 5 18-year-olds in NHL history to record 5 points in a game, joining some pretty good company in Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Ilya Kovalchuk, Dale Hawerchuk, and Jack Hamilton. He also joins Eddie Olczyk as the only 18-year-old in Blackhawks history to score 20 goals, and hopefully he'll be on the push for 30 over these next 16 games. And he now sits at 51 points in 52 games this season. Obviously, the leading scorer for the Blackhawks. Obviously, the leading rookie point getter in the NHL. And he's also third in points per game among 18-year-olds over the last 35 years. His idol, Sidney Crosby, is first at 1.26 points per game, while Connor McDavid, even though it was a shortened time frame for him because he got hurt his rookie year, he averaged 1.07 points per game. Connor Bedard is now at 0.98 points per game, fittingly enough. And he's, doing it with the 32nd ranked offense alongside him. Yes, the Blackhawks power play has been better lately, still been near the bottom of the NHL for the majority of the season. I don't know what else I need to say besides reading those things that I just did to emphasize how special of a player Connor Bedard already is. With little to no help alongside him, the worst offense in the NHL, he's still tearing it up. And it's going to be so much fun over these last 16 games to see if he's going to be able to push that 30-goal plateau and if he'll be able to get up over a point per game and maybe even pass Connor McDavid and get second all-time for 18-year-olds in terms of points per game in their first NHL season. But what's also been really impressive to me, Blackhawks fans, apologize, nose is all of a sudden a little runny here, kind of gross, I understand. What's also been really impressive to me, Blackhawks fans, Nick Foligno kind of spoke about this during his post-game interview with the media, but just how Connor Bedard is starting to anticipate plays and how he's starting to we always saw this in him even at the beginning, but he's really piecing it all together. His anticipation and how he thinks one step ahead and has just such a high hockey IQ. I think it's just becoming more and more evident on a nightly basis. The first assist that he had last night on the 2-on-1 with Philipp Kurashev, Nick Foligno alluded to this. He had his man pinned along the boards, and Foligno was able to make a beautiful centering pass to spring the Hawks for that 2-on-1 rush. But what he noticed was Connor Bedard wasn't ahead of him up the ice when he made that feed or when he recognized the play. He was below him. He was still being a responsible, supportive center in the defensive zone. But when he recognized there could be an odd man break, he immediately beelines it up ice. Great pass by Nick Foligno to spring that 2-on-1. But he wasn't cheating. He was still being responsible as a defensive center, and it led to offense the other way, and those are the exact types of plays we like to see out of Connor Bedard. And then even I think the real big goal in this one was when the Hawks extended their lead to 4-2 with under a minute to go in the second period. How did that play happen? Some great hustle out of Nick Foligno on the forecheck, but Connor Bedard also kept the play alive at the blue line with a nice hack. Then he goes and sets up Philipp Kurashev for a one-timer. And then on the power play too, we're just seeing him getting more and more confident. He's holding on to the puck longer. I think he's just understanding what he is able and what he isn't able to do on the man advantage. He's understanding that better. And he's just starting to find all the seams out there as defenders are starting to have to respect him a little bit more and more. Found Kurashev for another one-timer on the man advantage. Had a nice centering feed to Johnson right out in front. That was his fourth assist of the game. We're seeing Connor Bedard get it done in a lot of different ways. Also, of course, scored his 20th goal of the season last night as well. So he's just making an impact all over the ice, on the power play, in the defensive zone, in transition. He's a special, special player, man. Still only 18 years old. Go and give him the Calder Trophy right now because there's no way anyone is chasing him down. A huge performance out of Connor Bedard last night to lead the Blackhawks to their second consecutive win for just the second time this season. It's the first time since 1991 that they've potted 7 goals in consecutive games. A lot of fun last night at the United Center. Hopefully we'll get more performances like that here in the final 16 games of the regular season. All right, coming up in just a moment here, Blackhawks fans, yes, it was the Connor Bedard show on full display last night at the UC, but there were some other really great performances from some other key players as well. I'll get into all of that, plus where Landon Slaggert could draw into the lineup during his NHL debut here in just a moment. But first, I need to talk to you all about Sleeper. A new NHL season brings all sorts of possibilities. Connor Bedard looks like he's going to be winning the Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year and could be on his way to potting 30 goals in his first NHL campaign. Austin Matthews looks like he's going to be winning the Rocket Richard Trophy and could be potting 70 for the first time in his career. And the Vancouver Canucks look like they could be taking down the President's Trophy, being the best team in the NHL this season, and you could be winning alongside all of them by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL network. And Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you have the opportunity to win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy contests. And it's so simple. All you have to do is select whether studs like Nathan McKinnon, Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, or Connor Bedard will record more or less than their sleeper projections for goals, assists, points, shots on goal, plus minus, and more in any given game. And again, Sleeper offers you the chance to win 100 times your cash. So start paying attention, make the correct picks, and you could be winning real big. And right now, you can also go and use the promo code listed down below. That's Locked On NHL in all caps to get up to an $100 match on your first deposit with Sleeper. Or even if you just want to deposit 25 or 50 bucks, Sleeper will match you on that up to $100. You just got to use the promo code Locked On NHL in all caps, and you can go and see Sleeper's terms of use right now for more details. I also need to talk to you all about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything that you need to maintain your vehicle and to level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. Plus, with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or else you'll get your money back. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. With all the parts you need at the prices you actually want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and to bring home that win. Again, that's ebaymotors.com. Segment 2, getting into some of my other takeaways from last night's monster 7-2 win over the Anaheim Ducks, was another pretty solid team performance out of the Blackhawks. It was a little bit of a slow start for them in the first period. They gave up a shorthanded goal, which was a little bit shoddy, but I love to see their responsiveness all night long, and that was pretty evident in the game against the Arizona Coyotes as well. And it shows there's no quit in this locker room, even though it's been a tough type of season. They're still all banded together and working hard and not giving up at any point in time. And a lot of respect for the Blackhawks for showing that never quit mentality. It's worked out pretty well for them in the last couple of games. But along with Connor Bedard, some really solid performances last night out of a handful of guys. Philipp Kurashev feels like the first one that I got to mention. His first 4-point game of his NHL career. He added his 12th and 13th goals of the season while tallying 2 assists as well. And what's just gotten so noticeable for the most part this season, but really over the last couple of weeks too, is just how much that chemistry between Connor Bedard and Philipp Kurashev is developing, and seeing them on the same wavelength and just reading the plays the same way, getting an understanding for one another. They're starting to open their bodies up because they know the pass is coming and they want to hammer home a one-timer. It just seems like they're really clicking and gelling right now. And I thought it was kind of funny. Foligno alluded to this during his post-game interview as well, but he said, yeah, those two are really close, and they're always talking hockey. They're always watching film. They're always trying to figure out how to make plays happen out there. But for some reason, whenever Nick goes and walks up to them, they just start getting really quiet and they just don't talk anymore. It's like the two kids are afraid of their dad overhearing what they're going to be talking about. But yeah, it just becomes so apparent that Connor Bedard and Philipp Kurashev are working really well together right now. And what a tremendous year it continues to be for Philipp Kurashev. After 4 points last night, he now has 40 points in 59 games this season. And man, if he can go and reach 50 points, 10 more in these final 16 games, it would be, man, unfathomable for me, because after Philipp Kurashev tallied 25 points last season for the Blackhawks, while mostly in a top 6 role, I thought his ceiling at the NHL would be like a 40 to maybe 50 point player, maybe at his ceiling. I never envisioned that happening in the very next season. And, you know, a lot of that credit probably goes to Connor Bedard for how he's been able to just be such an impact player, and Philipp Kurashev has been the beneficiary of that. But Kurashev's confidence in his own abilities is certainly sky high, and it does feel like he's finally able to put it all together now that he has a legitimate playmaker and deadly threat out there alongside him. So I think it can kind of go both ways there, but there's no denying how impressive Philipp Kurashev has been in his 4th NHL campaign. Could be a 50 goals or 50 point getter, 50 goal scorer. That would be insane. 50 point getter, something that I really never envisioned happening for him. And he's still only 24 years old. He'll be 25 next year. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in the future with Kurashev and Bedard. Like I said, they're establishing that really strong chemistry. Bedard said Kurashev was nasty yesterday during his presser. It's going to be really interesting to see if Philipp Kurashev can hold down that spot moving forward. Not this season, but in future years, given all the talent that's going to be joining the Blackhawks in their forward group moving forward. And then also on the top line, Nick Foligno had himself a 4-point game as well with 4 assists. 4s were actually wild for Mr. Foligno last night. 4 assists, 4 shots on goal, and 4 block shots in over 18 minutes of ice time. And I think he made a lot of smart reads and really underrated plays to set up goals last night. I mentioned on Philipp Kurashev's first goal of the game, Foligno made a beautiful no-look outlet pass through the neutral zone to spring Bedard and Kurashev for that 2-on-1. On that goal in the final minute of the second period, his forecheck and his tenacity is really what made it happen. And after 4 points last night, Foligno now has 33 in 59 games this season. And kind of like Philipp Kurashev on the hunt for 50. I'm rather curious to see if Nick Foligno is going to hit 40 for the first time since 2016-17 and just the third time in his career at 36 years old. He's just been such a phenomenal leader, and his interactions with Connor Bedard are just so funny. Hearing what he said on the bench to him, being like, I have so much to teach you and not enough contract time. I'm going to have to be in Chicago for like 5 years after I retire. It was a lot of fun. Great to see the fellas just enjoying themselves, having smiles on their faces. God, there has not been a lot of fun had this season. So cool to see them having it over the last 2 games. The big guns for the Blackhawks, Bedard, Kurashev, Foligno, right there at the helm of all of it. Seth Jones also found the back of the net again last night for his 4th goal of the season. He now has 7 points over his last 4 games as well, and he also found the back of the net for his 2nd power play goal of the season, his 2nd PPG over the last 4 games, and crazy enough, Blackhawks fans, that's the same number of power play goals that Seth Jones had in his first 196 games with the Chicago Blackhawks. It's been nice to see him have that shoot first mentality, not just in these last 4 games. I really do think he's been trying a lot better over the last probably month or so, ever since he's come back from his injury. But the Hawks just weren't really getting the final result until the start of March. So has to feel good for Seth Jones. Interestingly enough, he also wasn't out there with the top power play unit on the first man advantage of the game. That went to Kevin Korchinski. And I mentioned over these final games of the season, I'm really going to be focusing on Kevin Korchinski, Connor Bedard, and Alex Vlasic. Korchinski got an opportunity right out of the gate in the first period to play with the top power play unit, and it just was clear early on that it wasn't his night. He had a couple of bad passes, a couple of forced turnovers, and actually a little bit of a miscue of his in the offensive zone on the power play. Passed a fastball over to Philipp Kurashev at the right dot that he wasn't able to handle. The Ducks get possession, throw it down the ice, and then get a 2-on-1, leading to Legason's first of the game to put the Ducks ahead 1-0. Just it's really clear to me Kevin Korchinski is still making 19-year-old plays out there, and that's okay. I think it's a little bit unfair that we see 18-year-old Connor Bedard making the NHL look so easy right off the rip while he's still kind of going through his struggles on the back end a little bit. Still an undersized young 19-year-old defenseman. Those things are going to happen, but I do think it's just been weird that the passing for Kevin Korchinski this year, there have been stretch passes where he's, looked really sharp and made plays that are apparent. Not very many can make in this league, but the simple ones have just given him some problems. So we'll see if that continues throughout these final 16 games. Also, Andreas Athanasiou is back and in a big way, and he made his presence and speed felt all night long. Tallied 2 assists and 3 shots on goal in his return to the lineup, his first game of action since November 9th, 2023, over 4 months ago. He also drew a penalty in the neutral zone because of his speed, and man, did the Blackhawks miss that in their forward group. I think it's the biggest thing that they're missing right now up front is they just don't have enough game-breaking speed. Getting AA back is so noticeable, and a really big night. You could tell he was a little bit fired up to get back in there, made his impact all over the ice, and wound up finishing with 2 assists. I also got to give a shout out to Tyler Johnson, scored his 15th goal of the season last night and is undoubtedly having his best season with the Blackhawks since he's been acquired from the Tampa Bay Lightning. Those 15 goals are the most he's tallied since 2018-2019, and would be nice to see him reach that 20-goal plateau once again this season. And he also now leads the Blackhawks with 7 power play goals on the season. I think his play has been a huge reason why the Blackhawks man advantage has been moving much better over the last couple of weeks. And then Ryan Donato, last but certainly not least. I mentioned earlier, it was a little bit of a sluggish start for the Blackhawks out of the gate, but Ryan Donato was one of the most noticeable players there in that first period. And the opening 20 was undoubtedly the worst of the game for the Blackhawks, but Ryan Donato was a guy that was bringing it right from the opening faceoff, brought a lot of good energy, and found the back of the net for the second game in a row for the 9th goal of his season. So a lot of guys contributing to the 7-goal performance out of the Blackhawks. Yes, Connor Bedard will get the limelight because of his 5-point game, but a lot of solid depth performances from some other guys. It's nice to see that out of the Chicago Blackhawks, because with the worst-ranked offense, it hasn't happened enough so far this year. So enjoy it while we got it, Blackhawks fans. A fun night at the UC. But also, What I do think is interesting is considering the Blackhawks just got this type of performance from their entire team. I mean, even Taylor Radish, who I didn't mention, snapped his 14-game point skid with an assist last night. And Landon Slaggert being on the verge of making his NHL debut, I do wonder if that gets pushed back to Sunday against the San Jose Sharks, just because after the performance the Blackhawks put up together last night, I just see it kind of hard for anyone wanting or anyone drawing out of the lineup. And it felt like that was on everyone's minds. They knew Landon Slaggert is nearing his debut soon, and someone is going to have to come out when that is the case. And no one really, looked like they wanted to come out last night. Everyone, I thought, provided a pretty good effort. So because of that, I do wonder if Slaggert's debut is moved a little bit back to Sunday. Prospects come first. I understand that, but I also don't think it would be the craziest thing in the world to see the Hawks and Luke Richardson run it back with the same lineup on Friday night against the Los Angeles Kings. So we'll see if that is the case. But like I said, a really solid team performance out of the Blackhawks to pick up their second consecutive win, beating the Ducks 7-2. All right, there are my final takeaways from last night's duck hunting win over Anaheim. Coming up in just a moment, I'll talk about the Blackhawks' red-hot power play and, in my opinion, what have been the biggest differences in their methods as of late. But first, I got to talk to you all about FanDuel. Go and get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, if you're a new customer, you can get $150 worth of bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's right, you heard me correct. $150 worth of bonus bets if your $5 moneyline bet wins. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from your favorite players to your favorite teams, quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive player props, and much, much more, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. And the NBA is taking over here now that football season has wrapped up, so it's a perfect time to go and place a wager down on LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Ish Smith, Joel Embiid, and some of the other best players in the NBA. And if you sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn, you can start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, an official partner of the NBA. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you're still watching this on YouTube right now and you're not already subscribed to the Locked On Blackhawks YouTube channel, what are you doing? Make sure to go and hit that subscribe button. It won't cost you anything, and that way you can get all of the latest Blackhawks news and updates as we start to creep towards the summer. And there's a lot of good stuff coming on the show. As a little bit of a spoiler alert, I'm going to start diving real deep into the 2024 NHL draft and some of the top prospects in it. Also, what the Blackhawks should be doing in free agency this summer, and which RFAs/UFAs do I think will be coming back next year. Make sure to hit that subscribe button so you can see all of that whenever it gets uploaded. And also, make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every single league. So go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Segment 3, one huge difference over the last couple of games. And honestly, I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. There did seem to be some progress being made over the last couple of weeks ever since Connor Bedard has returned to the lineup. But what's really been evident here in the start of March thus far is how good the Blackhawks power play has been. And going back to the start of this season, some of you may remember one of my bold predictions going into the regular season was that the Blackhawks were going to have a power play that finishes top 10 in the NHL. That was my bold prediction, but I really did feel like they had the skill to be a top 15 unit in this league because of the talent they had. Connor Bedard coming in. Taylor Hall was healthy at that point in time. Seth Jones running the point along with Kevin Korchinski. Nick Foligno comes in. Corey Perry was here at the time. Lucas Reichel, Andreas Athanasiou. Taylor Radish was a good power play guy last year. And I felt like Absolutely, the Hawks were going to be more dynamic on the man advantage than they were the year before, and just with all the weapons they had and with Connor Bedard being implemented into it, I thought it was going to open up a lot of possibilities for this Blackhawks man advantage, but that's not what happened. They have been near the bottom of the standings for the majority of the season, but over the last few weeks, they really have seemed to figure it out a little bit, and things are obviously getting much, much better here in a hurry based on how they've scored 10 power play goals over the last 4 games in only 22 opportunities, and they have multi-goal performances out of their power play in 3 of the last 4 games. They've won all 3 of those games, by the way. So I think the biggest question is what's happening? What's changing with this Blackhawks power play? There are a couple of things that have been noticeable to me since Connor Bedard has returned, and it feels like it's all starting to culminate and mesh together right here and right now. First and foremost, Connor Bedard is the focal point. He's the key piece, and his growing confidence in his ability to shoot the puck and also the playmaking, I think, has really been much better over the latter half of the season compared to the first half. His goal scoring abilities were giving him a lot of chances early on, but he's really added that playmaking tool and gotten more comfortable, I think, in his passing abilities throughout the course of the season. And he's just starting to read plays better and figuring out how to execute properly. Like, whenever there seems to be an opening for him to get it cross ice to Philipp Kurashev for the one-timer, he's recognizing that now. And part of that is something that I mentioned going into this year, why I thought the Hawks power play was going to be good. It's because Connor Bedard just he's got to demand respect. And if opposing penalty killers are giving him too much room out there at the left dot or at the right dot, it doesn't really matter. He's just starting to turn into a rover out there. But if they give him too much space, he will shoot the puck, and he's one of the best at it in the NHL already at 18 years old. And now that opposing penalty killers and players are more aware of that, I feel like Connor Bedard is starting to get more respect, and that's only opening up things for all the other guys. Philipp Kurashev at the right dot. We've seen Seth Jones at the point getting a lot of shot opportunities off. I think that goes hand in hand with the mentality, but also Connor Bedard opening things up for other people, and Tyler Johnson in front of the net, like that last goal the Blackhawks had last night. If you take away the seam pass to Philipp Kurashev, you take away the shot from Bedard, there's still going to be an open man out there. He found him right in front of the net. And I think just putting it all together has been the biggest difference, and Connor Bedard growing in confidence has been the most noticeable change in the Blackhawks man advantage here recently. What's also been noticeable to me is they're just winning more offensive zone faceoffs. And shout out to Darren Pang for really pointing this out on the broadcast over the last few games. But Nick Foligno has been excellent at the faceoff dot in the offensive zone and maintaining possession right off the rip, right off that faceoff with 2 minutes on the clock is so huge. And Nick Foligno, not a natural center really, but he's had to step in for Connor Bedard this year as he continues to struggle at the dot, which isn't a concern. That happens at 18 years of age, but Nick Foligno jumping in and winning a lot of faceoffs, that's been noticeable to me. The shoot first mentality has been so noticeable, especially from Seth Jones at the point. And along with that, crashing the net hard. Tyler Johnson, Nick Foligno, they've shown great determination to get to the front of the net. And a lot of Tyler Johnson's 7 power play goals this year have not been very pretty, but we're not asking them to be. It's go to the net with the purpose, put your stick down on the ice, find loose pucks, find centering feeds from Mr. Connor Bedard. I think Tyler Johnson and Nick Foligno have both done that really well this season. And even when the Blackhawks aren't winning faceoffs, I think entering the zone off of the rush has been a lot better in general, too. I think Connor Bedard is doing it more frequently and with a better success. Philipp Kurashev is also someone who's kind of, I think, gotten more comfortable and more confident in his puck handling and in his speed, and just piecing that all together gives the Blackhawks another weapon that can carry the puck into the offensive zone on the power play. So I think that's been one of the biggest changes as well. And then all in all, just the chemistry is really starting to show. And maybe this was a shame on me type of moment for expecting the Blackhawks to be clicking on the man advantage right out of the gate. But honestly, they were looking like they were gonna with how they were moving the biscuit during training camp and during the preseason. It just never really happened. But now it's really starting to take the forefront. And it's nice to see the Blackhawks creep up a couple of spots on the power play in terms of where they rank in the NHL compared to the other 31 teams. It's been much better over the last 4 games. It's been a culmination of a lot of different things, but just the trust in one another, the understanding, the chemistry developing, particularly between Connor Bedard and Philipp Kurashev at the 2 dots. We haven't seen something like that since Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane a couple of years ago. So it's been fun to see those cross-ice passes, finding the back of the net once again. Blackhawks power play been a whole lot better. Hopefully that's something that keeps up throughout these last 16 games to give them some momentum in them and some confidence in themselves heading into this offseason. All right, that is going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for tuning into the show. Be sure to go and follow the Locked On Blackhawks podcast for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to go and subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. And that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and give me a follow on X at Jack Bushman 2, and make sure to also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, stay safe. Have a good rest of your day. I'll see you next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.